What's going on, Reef Builders? I'm Jake Adams. Welcome to another video from the Reef Builder Studio. And I have the sincere privilege of sharing with you the first long-term review video about the brand new Kessil A500X. Now, just to rewind, when I first heard about the Kessil A500X, based on the model number, I assumed it was just a little bit beefier than the already well-known Kessil A360X, but in fact, this light is twice as bright at 185 watts packed into a small, dense matrix array. So this is not your typical multi-chip that you see available from a lot of different manufacturers and kind of off-brand lights. This is Kessil's own proprietary version of a multi-chip. And long story short, it results in really, really powerful point source lighting that is the most similar that I've ever seen to metal halide. I'm not even kidding with you. When I first put one of these lights over this tank, I had this cognitive dissonance just looking at the aquarium because I thought I put a metal halide over the aquarium. And I was incredibly excited after running it on this tank for a little while. So this is the Mangrove Lagoon. This is probably like a true lagoon tank with kind of a split distribution of animals. We have light-hungry trees at the top. We have light-hungry corals at the bottom. And basically, this setup is probably one of the most challenging ecosystems you could try to light in an aquarium setting. So thank you for joining me in this video. We're going to dive into this tank, some of the animals, some of the different features of the Kessil A500. I think you're really, really going to like it. So let's get it going. If you're familiar with the Kessil line, this is the current model of the A360X. You see how small this thing is? It's just a tiny little pancake. So the Kessil A500 is twice the size, but it doesn't really register as far as being a giant light. It's still a very, very small fixture overall, especially for the amount of power that it puts out. Now, these two lights, what I'm trying to do with them is I'm trying to light up the top part of the tree canopy basically, as well as the bottom part. So together, we're getting a really nice spread and a nice uniform light field. The lights I was running on there before was trying to achieve some of this, and this is going to really come into play when we start evaluating the real strengths of the Kessil A500X. So I had the Philips Coral Care Gen 2 on the back to give me that nice wide diffuse lighting, and on the front I had the Eco Lamps Spectra SP200 that has built-in reflectors to really drive the light down. So I was using about 400 watts of light using two different fixtures. They were almost covering the tank, if you remember the previous video. But being able to get those off of here and replace them with these two, sizable spotlights has really just dramatically transformed the entire appearance of the aquarium. So like I said, these are 185 watts. They're tuna blue, so you got your white, you got your blue. And the way I have them set up, I've got the Kessil Wi-Fi dongle here that is daisy chained then to this light. So the one dongle controls both lighting fixtures. The light itself is $739. The Wi-Fi dongle is $100, and Kessil K-Link adapters to connect different lights. I don't know, they're like 10 to 15 bucks or something. But it's really important to tap into that additional controller because that's what opens up the red, green, and violet channels. And the violet channel includes indigo and purple LEDs. And so when you really turn those on, you start to get a lot more color rendition, especially as you can see back in the back there from my Japanese pink Nephthia soft corals. So let me tell you a little bit about the livestock that we're using here on this tank, or that we have inside this tank. So I have 8 mangrove trees. They are planted in Tula Fishies refugite. You can't really see it. So this is not super set up like a reef tank. It's more set up like a coral aquarium, but I hope some of you guys are taking note that this right here is 3 feet. This tank is 33 inches cubed, and I'm growing Stylophora, Acropora, Hycnophora, and Montipora on the bottom. Okay, I just want you to let that register for a second. So, I mentioned previously that one of the biggest changes to this light that almost negates the need for any kind of par measurements is that you can shape the light, right? So currently I'm using 2 of the I guess these have been around for a little while. The 2 Legacy 55-degree magnetic reflectors. These just pop on. So I'll show you what that looks like when I take one off. That light just spills all over the place. And I actually wouldn't mind on this aquarium, other than it just kind of bleeds out the sides of the aquarium because I don't have water in here. If this was filled with water, there would be a lot more reflection from this super wide angle beam. This is an awesome use case for if you have like large wide coral flats and you need to just illuminate some corals for resale, and then this is starting to get into concentrating that light a little bit more. So that's a little bit more useful for concentrating the light just a little bit. So they call it 55 degrees, and that really starts shaping the light to kind of focus on the trees and then focus on the corals. You can see that one of those mangroves right there in the middle is starting to show off its reddish color, and that is why they're called red mangroves. When they're in really, really bright light, they'll turn a lot more red like that. But the critical new piece of the equation that is tying this light together is a brand new 35-degree reflector. Now this is super duper cool because what I'm gonna do in the future is I'm gonna raise these lights and use this very spotlighted reflector. This is 35 degrees. Let me pop it on here so you can just kind of see what that looks like. And there we go. And so now the trees on the outside are a lot darker. Now it's really focusing the light right there where you see that red mangrove. So what I'd like to do is use that feature to raise up the light even more and get this really dramatic effect. I have not employed that on this tank yet because I wanted to show a little bit more of a general use case scenario, like you guys, who are interested in this light might be interested in, but I am using this on my freshwater tank. So let's take a look at that and see how it looks. So this is my 50-gallon Ultim angelfish planted aquarium. This is the Tuna Sun Kessil A500X that I've used on this tank for about 2 years, and I've experimented using it different ways. So I've had it real low without the reflector. I had it a little bit higher with the 55-degree reflector, but now with the 35-degree reflector, I've been able to raise the light up, and it does 2 things. One, I just kind of have this unadulterated vision or view of the aquarium from above, but it's really just it gives you some like really hard, strong glitter lines, but it also creates this dramatic shadows. Now I know not all of you are going to be all about those dramatic shadows. I've always said that we really get used to the light that we have. Anytime I change over a light, it takes me about 2 weeks to a month to really learn to love it for its own features. But what I'd like to tell you is that there's still some darkness around the corner, so I want to raise this light even more. So when I raise it, let's say 6 inches higher, the just concept, the notion that there's actually a light illuminating this tank is going to start to fade away, because it's just going to be a display and the light's going to be so far out of view that you won't really consider that. So this is kind of what I'm aiming to do with the Lagoon tank in the near future. I'm going to raise those lights and start dabbling with these tight angle reflectors. All right, so while we're here, I don't want to make this just a simple basic light review. I kind of want to show off this tank because it's doing really, really well. So I'm currently using the two Kessil A500Xs on their currently available gooseneck mounting solution. They've each got the multi-angle ball joint, and this one right here has the Wi-Fi dongle. But from this side, you can see that we are illuminating these light-hungry mangrove trees, and they've been doing really, really well. One thing that has boosted their growth is periodic misting to really get off some of that salt, I guess, residue that they build up from their leaves, on their leaves, from processing the seawater. And you can see that the mangrove, the red mangrove that is in the most light, it kind of looks a little sickly, but it's actually the red color that gives the red mangrove its name. So, like I said, this is a 30-inch cube, 33-inch cube, so 33 inches all the way around, and it's got an internal overflow right there, just kind of populating the center section, and right in front of that, kind of partially shaded, is some beautiful deep purple nephtheas, Japanese purple nephtheas that really have never looked better under any other light. The purple spectrum of the Kessil A500X, which includes some violet and some indigo color channels, really makes that corals pop. And down there in the back, I've just got a token Australian gold torch, and you can kind of see the glass vases, I guess you could call them, that I'm using to hold the refugite that the mangroves are rooted in. The water flow is provided by a pair of Nero 5s. They were just the easiest thing to pop there in the back and just kind of really pull out of the aquascape, so they're really non-intrusive. Another one back there, basically set up kind of in a gyre mode orientation, so they alternate back and forth. And here I've got some green plating turbinaria. We've got kind of a mottled Astreopora, a thin red branching Montipora I call the Manila Spy. Here's one of the most underrated corals of all time. Man, I think it's looking so good right now. The Blue Ridge octocoral, and we've got some red cap, and then some of the classic green polyp leather. Now this is a beautiful like gold crown leather coral, and I don't know what it is, but I think it's a lighting thing. So as the schedule kind of ramps up and gets really bright, this guy closes up in the middle of the day. So I'm gonna have to move him to a different spot because I think he's just getting a little bit blasted. But that does not matter to these particularly beauties. This is a strain I got from ACI Aquaculture, been growing it for a while. And you know, those tips, they look a little bit bluish, but as the light becomes a little lighter, those bluish growth ends with the yellow tip really start to pop just as soon as we get a little bit from the daylight spectrum. Here we've got an immortal tort front and center, just eating up as much as it can. And then this Milka stylo has been here for about 3 months. These were like raw, rough, chopped up little frags when I put them on this disc. So they've been enjoying this tank for about 3 months. Nice little classic neon green hydnophore coral. This is a spectacular strain of neon green Capnella coral. There's a brown Capnella, there's like greenish Capnella with brown polyps, and then there's this guy who's like practically overgrown. And just for fun, I put one of my oldest strains of orange Leptoceras way back there in the back, where it's actually partially shaded like it prefers. And in front of that, we've got some long polyp leather, not a weeping willow, with a Durasa clam there in the middle. I've got a little collection of Acan echinatas of various orange colors, and then just a little wall of really flowy Goniopora corals. They really like getting blasted by the water flow. You kind of have to acclimate them to it, and these guys are extremely colorful. You guys see enough blued out aquariums. I think it's really good for the hobby to show off some tanks and daylight lighting. But right there in the back top center, you can really start to see how beautiful purple and pink that Nephthia has become, even when it's partially shaded. It's got a little bit of alveopore in front of it that is not minding a real blast of light, and then the classic 20-year-old strain of Star Mint candy coral. So there's a wide variety of corals in here that are really enjoying this environment, not to mention the trees. The trees really like it when I missed it, but man, I'm enjoying this tank more than I ever have. One of the things that people always want to know about new and existing aquarium lights is, what is the par level? And I really push back against this question because that metric is more likely to get you into trouble than it is to help you. And no time has that been even more important than with the Kessil A500X. So you have 185 watts of light coming from 100 LEDs. So you're running the LEDs at less than 2 watts per diode. This is an expensive approach to creating a really high performance aquarium light. And so what you get with the Kessil A500 is you have just this source, this powerful just hose, this fire hose of light that's just spewing light all over the place. And it's really up to the user to change how they manipulate and shape that light based on the placement of the light, how long you run different color channels, what is your entire photo period, you know, which one of these 2 reflectors you end up using for your particular aquarium. Now let me tell you one of the few things that I think is going to make this light better. I'm sure there's a lot of old timers here, or even mid timers, who are going to rail against having a single point source. Again, some of those are personal preferences, depending on how you use it, depending on how you shape the light with the secondary reflector. But one of the things we really learned from metal halides was using a large reflector to take that point source and have it reflected from a wider area, so you can really fill in the 3D branches of your branching acroporas and things like that. So again, I think it's going to be up to us to do some of that experimentation on how to bounce light in the way that is most beneficial to the aquarium. But the other thing that's really going to affect the performance of this light is some stronger light mounts. So Kessil has a rigid arm that just needs to be a little bit longer and maybe a little bit taller, because I have it set as high as possible on my freshwater tank, and it needs to be more. And goosenecks, man, I just love goosenecks. It's a good thing that they have that multi-angle ball joint that you can pop on the end to really point the light wherever you want. But I think it's going to be really beneficial to have a larger goose mount, because these things can just barely handle the weight. Like I really have to push them further than I want the light, because they'll kind of droop back down. I'm gonna have to experiment, man. There's still a lot to learn about this particular powerhouse source of light. Like I said, if you have a medium-sized tank or nano tank, just skip, look at some of the other offerings from Kessil. But if you want a lot of lighting power, or you want to do some tricky things, like I know my buddy Mark is trying to do something with this light, where he has the lights really high, but then uses the narrow angle reflector to shape that light down. That's going to open up some really creative uses. So I wanted to populate this aquarium with a wide range of corals and critters that most of you would be familiar with. And again, let me just reiterate, the lights are 3 feet above the tank, so only 2 lights on this aquarium. But what I'd like to do with this tank, and what we're going to do probably shortly after this filming, is I'm going to start removing some of these smaller corals. I'm going to turn this into maybe like 2 or 3 large Capricornus colonies. I got nice big chunks of orange Monty Cap. You can see that in the back. I got some more from Evan's tank the other week when we did some bushwhacking after his video, and Langside Cap, that big chunk of Langside Cap that was in this tank. It's now over there in one of the coral flats. And as those caps get bigger, we're just going to let them dominate this entire aquarium, because it's been far too long since we've seen some majestic, dramatic, scrolling, plating, orange and purple rim Capricornus. And I think that's also going to be more amenable to the way I want to use this light by having them much higher, using the narrow angle reflector and trying to light up basically a two-dimensional plating Montipora capricornus. So this light, like I said, I came at it, I approached it a little bit lukewarm, but realizing that creating a lot of power and packing into a point source opened up a lot of possibilities for shaping that light really got me interested in flexing my creative aquarium presentation muscles. So I really hope you enjoyed this deep dive into the Kessil A500X. We want to thank Kessil for letting us participate in their early testing and review program. It's been a real treat to already be very familiar with these lights as soon as they were announced. So if you have any questions about this light, go ahead and pop those in the comments. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, make sure to give it a like, and make sure to don't forget to subscribe and hit that notification bell so you never miss real in-depth reef technical review videos like this one. So thanks again for tuning in, and we'll catch you guys on the next one. Later, guys.